Hey, I'm Joel. We're going to make this stabby bass sound in Roland Zenology Pro software synth. So firstly, we'll make sure we have initial tone selected. So click the browser up here, make sure all is selected on the left, all is selected on the right, and hit initial tone here. And then just write yourself a little melody, grab a drum loop. So like something melodic. Or something like offbeat. Don't forget swing if you're writing that house music. I love the MPC swings in Ableton. So we go back into Zenology Pro here. We're going to turn mono on, so only one note can be played at a time because it's bass. And we'll turn unison on here. We're going to turn the unison size all the way to full and unison detune about 7. And in the oscillator here, we're going to choose virtual analog and we're going to use a modified sine wave. We're going to turn the pulse width all the way up to about 121. So it's almost saw-esque. Just going to get rid of that drum loop. Okay, so we're going to go into the amp envelope here. This is where we're going to really shape our sound. First thing we're going to do is, if we play that now with no change, there's a little click and a pop happening at the start of the note. So to get rid of that, we're going to hold shift on the first node here and move it to the right so we get 1. So it's going to just take that tiny little bit of attack onto the note to take off that click and pop. And then we're going to use these next two nodes to find a nice decay setting for us to work with here. So I've gone and recorded all of the numbers that I've used on my preparation for this. I'll just show you them here, but you can really just take your time with this and get something that sort of works for how you want it to sound. So I've got T2 at 195 and then L2 at 773. Don't forget to hold shift and move in increments of 1. And then the T3 here, I've got at 213 and L3 is 506. You can either do that by hand here, or if you hit Pro Edit and then go into Amp Envelope, we can set the node values here. So you can see T2 is at 195 and L2 is at 773. T3 is at 213 and L3 is at 506. And then the T4, which is the release, is just what it defaults to. So you can enter it in this way if you like to copy mine exactly, or you can just use this section here to sort of shape it and tailor it to how you want it. And then once we've got that the way we like it, we're going to go to filter here. We're going to set the filter to a Moog filter at a 24 decibel cutoff. And we're going to move the cutoff here down to 148. Now that's not 148 hertz. That's just on the scale of 1023. You can see in the top left here that Zenology Pro uses. So we're going to turn that down to 148, give or take, of course. And make sure, hold shift to move in increments of 1. And then make sure resonance is down. And then we're going to use the filter envelope here to shape our sound further. So we're going to bring these 3 nodes out, and T1 is going to be at 0, L1 is going to be max, and then T2 here is going to be at 158, and then L2 is going to be 305. And then I'm going to go to Pro Edit to show you how to set that. So see where that is there, T3 623, L3 0. If we go to Pro Edit here, we go to Filter Envelope, Partial 1. We move down the line here and we find T2 is at 158, L2 is at 305, and T3 is going to be, we'll set that to 205, enter, and then L3 is going to be at 32. And then T4 is going to be at 104. L4 is 0. So now if we go back in here, we can see that that's changed there to the way that we like it. And we're going to bring the envelope depth up to 34. There we go, that's sounding really nice. Obviously not in our octave range yet, but we'll get to that shortly. So now that we've got partial 1 set up the way we like it, we're going to go to Pro Edit again, hit Utility, Copy, Tone Partial 1, Utility, Paste, Tone Partial 2. Now we've got all the exact settings on both of the partials. They're going to be exactly the same. So listening to them together, it's just the same thing doubled. But on this one, we're gonna let's just turn tone partial 1 off and just get partial 2. We're gonna go to pitch and we're gonna turn it down 2 octaves. Coarse tune here to minus 24 semitones. There we go. That's sounding a little bit more bassy. So in the amp envelope for that one, we're going to adjust these slightly. So T1 will stay the same. T2 will bring to 308. And then L2 at 586. And then T3 at L3, let's go into Pro Edit just so I can show you again how to do that. So amp envelope under partial 2, we want, so T2 at 308, L2 at 586, T3 is going to be 206, and L3 is going to be 389. So going back to Visual Edit, we've got, it's subtly different to the first one here. Then we go into the filter. That should be the same. Moog filter, 24 decibel cutoff. We're going to bring the cutoff on this one up to about 259. And there it is. We're going to change the envelope depth to full on this one, and we're going to change the envelope slightly. So T1 is at 0. T2 is also going to be at 0. Oh yeah, sorry. So I got rid of that T1 and just used T2 as the start of the sound. So T2 is at 0, level 1023. And then T3 is going to be at 84 and L3 at 0. Remember, you cannot do all of this in Pro Edit if you prefer. I just want to show you what it looks like. So that's that one. Notice that's really short, so just playing the first partial. Second partial. Now is where the magic happens. So we're going to turn partial 1 on and partial 2 off. But if we turn sync on now, the pitch of partial 2 is going to control the pitch of partial 1. So we've got that bass from partial 2 shining in, but then partial 1's adding some harmonic content on top. So now if we go into the pitch envelope here, we'll bring partial 1 down 24 semitones. If we've got the partial synced, partial 1 is going to stay in the pitch of partial 2. But if we detune these slightly, we're going to, so this is it at the same octave. And if we move that down a semitone, it's going to affect the sound a little bit. And as we go further away from the root note, it's going to give us that fun little like chorusy sound almost. So putting it back at the root and then bring it down. 28 sounded quite nice to me. Just because this is out of tune, quote unquote, it's still going to be in tune because it's synced to partial 2. Now we're going to go into the oscillator section here. We're going to bring the wave gain up of partial 1 here. So just watch your volumes. Every step on here is a double in volume of partial 1. So we're going to bring that up to 0 dB. Just watch the master volume up here. So we'll bring the master volume down. About 86 worked for me. Might bring it down just a little bit more. And now if we play around with this master cutoff, if we just quickly check the filters here, 12 o'clock on the master cutoff is going to be where the filters are. And then as we filter down, it's going to send the filters down. And then obviously if we turn it up, it's going to open the filters. Now you've got your sound the way you want it. You can, I definitely recommend playing around with the filter envelopes and the amp envelopes here. Now either just because partial 2 is off, any changes made here will be heard in partial 1 because it's controlling the pitch of partial 1. And like, you know, if this note stays on for longer, it'll change the sound. And then if you change the shorter decay on that, it'll change the sound of the overall sound as well. So that's it for synthesis done on this sound. So I'm just going to mute those drums again. Now we do some post-processing. So the first thing is we're going to add an overdrive plugin after the fact. And we're going to turn the drive up, the tone up, the dynamics down to 9.4%, and the dry wet just a little bit, like maybe like 3%. And then you can play around, bring the resonance all the way down and just play around with the frequency until you like it. About the 850 mark or so. So just make sure those tone and drive knobs are all the way up. So without the overdrive, with the overdrive. Sort of fatten up that sort of stabby mid-range section. Next, we use my favorite preset, the saturator, a bit warmer. Just to really fattens it up. Then we're going to use a multi-band dynamic preset called multi-band compression. Now, please take your time with this compression. If you want, do it yourself to get sort of the highs, the mids, and the lows the way you want it. I'm just going to use this plugin because I am a plugin hero. So without it, and then with it, sort of shapes it a bit, gives it a bit more life. Then we're going to add a chorus on there. Oops, not there. There. So just play around with these settings to get them the way you like. I changed the high pass down to about 102. Turn the delay to off. Just bring the amount up quite a bit and bring the rate down. Just to a point where you like it. I'm going to bring the output of that multiband compression just down a smidge, maybe 2 decibels. And then you can play around with the feedback. I think about 17%. It's quite nice. And then the dry wet as well. Just gives us a little bit of width. Just play around with the amount and rate there and you'll find something that you like. But just really subtle. You could go a lot of dry wet if you wanted. But it's kind of dancing around the panning left and right. So I think a little bit less sort of keeps it a bit more center and just a bit more tame. Now I've just added a sausage fattener plugin on this one. I really love the sausage fattener. If you don't have it, it's worth the $40 or whatever you pay for it. And you just add some fatness. So without sausage fattener, with it. And then I just added an EQ afterwards, just to sort of shape the sound a little bit. I don't like these sort of low mids. So if we listen, sort of isolate them a bit. Sort of a bit muddy, and our kick sort of could sit around here somewhere. So this is all going to change when you do a final mix anyway, but this is just sort of a rough idea. And then I've cut the highs sort of about 10k mark or 8k mark, 7, somewhere around there. Just sort of with a shelf, just boosted that a little bit at the cutoff. And then of course we add a sidechain compressor. Let's just use the glue compressor sidechain to the drums there, the master track there. Bring the attack all the way down, the release down a little bit. And we're gonna, because we're using a drum loop, let's just isolate those low frequencies. Bring that threshold down. And listening to the offbeat bass. There you go. That's how you make like a sort of funky, housey, stabby bass sound in Roland Zenology Pro software synth. Thanks for watching.